Wang Lin's expression subtly shifted as a roar rang in his mind, as though a strange force had awakened within his body. Under the impact, memories of the ancient god 2C, which he had gained long ago, flashed rapidly through his mind. Xun'er did not blink, her gaze fixed on Wang Lin. The moment the ancient god star mark appeared on his forehead, her eyes suddenly filled with confusion. This confusion, like swirling mist, passed quickly in her eyes. In the blink of an eye, Xun'er felt her body tremble, as though a hidden memory within her soul had suddenly opened with a mighty force. Before her, the dreamlike scene appeared again. She was still half kneeling at the altar, and below her, countless men and women chanted strange incantations. The figure on the altar held a posture as graceful as a treasured vase, gazing at the sky while a peculiar soft sound escaped her lips. Wish! The sky was filled with swirling clouds, roaring like raging waves of the sea, pushing outward frantically, revealing the vast blue sky and a towering figure behind the clouds. On this figure's forehead, only 5 star points glimmered, yet there was a distinct, powerful aura unlike that of other ancient gods. An unusual, royal energy emanated from it, filling the heavens and earth. The figure's face was cold and indifferent, as if no change in the world could stir even a flicker of emotion. A chilling gaze locked onto Xun'er's eyes. The ancient god in front of her was none other than Wang Lin. Primordial people, Moon Clan, divine servant. With spirit, I pray for the ancient god's descent to grant us divine power and lead us to war against the Tower Clan. In that dreamlike state, Xun'er's face was filled with fervent reverence. The moment Wang Lin appeared, she immediately bowed and softly chanted in respect. At the same time, below the altar, countless men and women displayed the same fervent fanaticism in their eyes. The chanting grew louder, forming a storm of sound that swept through the heavens and earth. On their foreheads, the moon marks slowly began to glow, growing brighter and brighter. Primordial people, Moon Clan, have prepared sufficient energy of the heavens and earth for the ancient god. Please accept it. In that ethereal vision, Xun'er slowly raised her treasured vase, and at that instant, the chant of the Moon Clan's people reached its peak. From their foreheads, the moon mark gathered an unimaginable force of the heavens and earth, which immediately rushed toward the altar. The energy of heaven and earth swirled like dragons, swiftly reaching the altar and converging toward the vase in Xun'er's hands. As more and more of this celestial energy merged into her hands, the vase began to solidify and take form. As Xun'er knelt with one knee on the ground and raised the vase above her head, the vase transformed into a fist-sized vortex that began to slowly ascend toward the ancient god resembling Wang Lin. At first, the vortex moved slowly, but after a few moments, its speed increased dramatically, as if it were being pulled by an immense force. It shot directly toward the ancient god's forehead, merging with it in a resounding crash. The ancient god resembling Wang Lin in the sky raised his right hand and pointed down. Instantly, an overwhelming power of the ancient god spread out, merging into Xun'er's body on the altar. After passing through a strange transformation within her body, the power was divided into thousands of parts and spread out from her body, sinking into the bodies of every person on the altar. In that moment, Xun'er felt a violent jolt, as if the world were spinning around her. She staggered, fell to the ground, and lost consciousness. The illusory vision vanished. The sky was still that of the water spirit star, and the peaks remained shrouded in mist, with the occasional sound of crashing waves echoing from the summit of the supreme peak. Nothing had changed, except for Xun'er. Like in the illusion, she was now lying unconscious on the ground. Wang Lin stood not far away, his eyes clouded with confusion. Divine servant. Wang Lin stared at the distant sky, lost in thought. In fact, when Xun'er made the vase gesture earlier, Wang Lin had distinctly felt a memory from 2C's recollection stir. It was a memory that had never existed before, suddenly unsealing like a permanent seal, revealing itself in Wang Lin's mind. In the primordial era, the ancient gods sought the power of the heavens and earth not only by absorbing the destruction of stars, but also by acquiring it from the primordial people. This gave rise to the existence of divine servants. There is reincarnation in this world. Every divine servant bears the mark cast by the ancient god themselves. Depending on the strength of the ancient god, the power granted to the divine servants varies. However, the mark on Xun'er is unusually powerful. After countless cycles of reincarnation over millennia, the mark still remains in her soul. If not for this, she would never have remembered the scenes from countless past lifetimes. Wang touched his forehead. The illusion he had just witnessed was not exclusive to Xun'er. Wang had experienced it too. Especially when the Moon Clan people gathered the energy of heaven and earth into a vortex and sent it into the ancient god's forehead. Wang immediately felt a warmth at his own forehead, as though a force was merging into his body. However, this power is very weak, just a single thread, yet it is incredibly tenacious. After merging with the body, it spreads and envelopes the entire being, becoming a part of the ancient god power. In her unconscious state, Xun'er suddenly developed a mark above her brow. This mark flickered intermittently, sometimes bright and sometimes dim, vaguely connected to Wang's heartbeat in a strange way. It could even be said that with each beat of Wang's heart, the mark would flicker and sink. If one day, Wang's heart were to stop beating, the mark would collapse, and with it, Xun'er's life and everything else. If the soul collapses, all traces will be erased, and there will be no more reincarnation. If the ancient god dies, the divine servant must perish. Xun'er's ability to reincarnate countless times can only be explained by one thing. Wang's eyes flashed with sharpness as he fell into silence. The ancient god who cast the spell back then did not die. And now, by some twist of fate, I have merged into it, causing the master of the divine servants to be replaced, with my mark taking the place of the previous one. There is only one explanation for this. The ancient god from back then, though not dead, is now burned out and no longer as powerful as I am. Wang sighed inwardly. He now understood why he had felt an unusual affection for Xun'er when he first saw her. Initially, he thought it was because of the water spirit root in her, which had stirred some memories and emotions. But now, Wang understood it wasn't that. It was because within her soul, there was a trace of the divine servant's mark from countless reincarnations ago. The memories of the ancient god to see in my mind. I thought I had comprehended everything. But now, it seems there are still many things sealed away, unable to be unlocked. This may be related to the incomplete memories I obtained from the ancient god's domain on Vermilion Birdstar. There is still a crystallized memory that I have not obtained. If I could acquire that, my memory inheritance would truly reach its full completion, Wang murmured. He cast a glance at the unconscious Xun'er, then withdrew his gaze, sitting cross-legged on the rock. He looked at the sky ahead, immersing himself in meditation and breathing exercises. Time passed quickly, and before long, the sun began to set. Watching the sunset slowly disappear between heaven and earth, the vast land was once again enveloped in darkness. Wang slowly began to sense the peculiar state at the hour of Chun, gradually sinking into it. In this state, his mind and body were at peace, as if he had cast aside all worries, leaving only the image of the sunset lingering in his mind, not fading away. There was always a thread of energy swirling before him, yet Wang could not grasp it. He was unclear about his current state or what he was even probing. However, after more than 1,000 years of cultivation, his spiritual perception was incredibly sharp. He vaguely sensed that this state was an extremely rare opportunity. If he could grasp it, it would be of great benefit to him. At this moment, Wang didn't realize that his state was actually the edge of the Genesis realm, one of the 3 ancient realms passed down in the cultivation world, along with the extreme and Tao realms. The Genesis realm is not as domineering as the extreme realm, nor as mysterious as the Tao realm, but its profoundness has always been considered the greatest in the cultivation world. No one knew how the Genesis realm came to be or how one achieved enlightenment in it. Looking at the history of the cultivation world, even from ancient times, those who entered the Genesis realm were extremely few. Though not as rare as the extreme realm, it was still quite uncommon. Strangely enough, those who entered the Genesis realm couldn't even explain how they had arrived there. Moreover, time within the Genesis realm was fleeting, vanishing in a moment. It was said that the 3 realms, extreme, Tao, and Genesis, were transformations of spiritual power, and once entered, one would remain there forever. Many supported this theory, but in reality, aside from the extreme realm, knowledge of the Tao and Genesis realms was vague, even to those who had entered them. It was known, however, that the three realms seemed to be divided into two transformations, spirit and divine. For instance, the extreme realm in Wang Lin's case initially manifested as spiritual power, but after some changes, it transformed into divine sense. Likewise, cultivators who had studied the three realms for countless years believed that both the Tao and Genesis realms were also divided into spiritual and divine transformations. Spiritual extreme, divine extreme. Spiritual Tao, divine Tao. Spiritual Genesis, divine Genesis. In comparison, the spiritual realms seemed easier to enter, while the divine realms were ethereal and elusive. Among those who had entered the Genesis realm since ancient times, almost all had briefly reached the spiritual Genesis, experiencing a dramatic change in their internal spiritual power in the blink of an eye. However, the time was so brief that the benefits gained were minimal. This phenomenon was first recorded in the ancient times, when a chi refiner named Lu Wen experienced the first such change. No one knew how he realized the divine Genesis or how long he stayed in it, whether it was brief or eternal. It is only known that this person, originally unknown and nameless, after closing himself off for several years, suddenly leapt to become an extraordinarily rare powerhouse in the cultivation world. What's even more terrifying is that this person's divine abilities were completely unheard of, never seen before by anyone. If it had been only that, it might have been fine, but the techniques in Lu Wen's hands were incredibly powerful, almost unimaginable. Moreover, they contained the essence of the Tao of heaven and earth. In the ancient times, it could be said that it stirred up a storm. Too many people sought to uncover the secrets behind this, and a blood-drenched storm began to unfold. Yet, no matter how many chi refiners, even some old recluses with deep cultivation, tried to intervene, they couldn't find a single trace of Lu Wen. It was as if Lu Wen could foresee all the crises and avoided them effortlessly. Later, this person might have realized that his power alone couldn't resist the many forces, and so mysteriously vanished, becoming a strange legend in the ancient cultivation world. It wasn't until much later, through a fortunate coincidence, that someone came to the realization Lu Wen had certainly stepped into one of the three great realms. It wasn't the extreme realm, but rather one of the Tao realm or Genesis realm. As for the specifics, considering all the clues, it was eventually concluded to be the Genesis realm. Thinking about the unheard-of divine abilities he used, the idea that those in the Genesis realm could create their own techniques of heaven and earth gradually spread. The rumors that have lasted until today are those impossible to verify stories. The extreme realm represents death, while the Genesis realm represents life. None of this was known to Wang Lin. At this moment, he was immersed in a strange state but still unable to grasp the thread of it, unable to fully integrate with it, merely circling around it. There was always a faint connection in front of him, but every time Wang Lin tried to grab it, he found nothing. This feeling was almost unprecedented for Wang Lin. Watching as the sunset was devoured by darkness, the land was shrouded in pitch black. Only the sound of the waves on the sea faintly reached his ears. Wang Lin was not anxious. His personality was filled with determination. Even in his youth, he had climbed the steps of Xun'er mountain with his frail body. If it weren't for this determination, there wouldn't be the Wang Lin of today. He gazed calmly at the sky. Since he couldn't seize the thread, he decided to wait. Wait for the cycles of sunrise and sunset. Wait for the thread to become clearer, and wait for the moment when he could finally grasp it. Xun'er awoke in the deep night. As her eyelashes trembled lightly, she slowly opened her eyes. What she saw was the starry sky. She silently sat up and glanced over at Wang Lin, who was meditating not far away. In this direction, by the moonlight, she could see the sharp contours of Wang Lin's profile. After awakening, it seemed as though a seal in her mind had been lifted, spreading throughout her consciousness and bringing back many vague memories. These memories were so ancient that, for a moment, as she looked at Wang Lin, she found herself in a daze. Her gaze lacked focus. In truth, she wasn't looking directly at Wang Lin. Even if he weren't there, she would still be like this. In Xun'er's mind, The distant memories flowed, and by dawn, they fixed upon the moment before she had fallen unconscious. She touched her forehead, and her eyes shimmered with clarity. The dreams that had puzzled her for years now had an answer. After remaining silent for a while, she gently stood up and respectfully said to Wang Lin, "Divine servant Mu Ling, I greet the ancient god." Wang Lin nodded slightly and said indifferently, "Go back. Do not disturb me again." Wang Lin's words were the highest command to Xun'er. She lowered her head and softly acknowledged, then shook the bell in her hand. Immediately, an immortal crane flew from afar. As Xun'er leaped into the air, she landed on its back. She glanced back at Wang Lin, a momentary daze in her eyes, sighed softly, and followed the crane away. Wang Lin didn't pay attention to Xun'er. His gaze remained fixed on the distant sea. Not long after, a ray of rosy light slowly appeared on the horizon and gradually spread across the sky. That strange feeling surged once again, but even as the first rays of the sun rose, Wang Lin still didn't have any breakthrough. Time passed slowly. Days and nights went by. Wang Lin had already forgotten how long he had been sitting here, how many days it had been. During this time, the three masters of Dust Path and Big Head Floating Wind Master had visited, but he hadn't noticed at all. At this moment, his gaze was still fixed on the distance, and his eyes were bloodshot, but he didn't care. It was as if everything in the world had vanished in his eyes. The only thing left was that moment from the first day. 10 miles from the peak where Wang Lin sat, the three masters of Dust Path hovered in midair. From afar, they could see a figure sitting cross-legged and unmoving on the mountain peak. "It's already been a month," Stellar One said, frowning in confusion. "What exactly is he trying to comprehend?" Beside him, Stellar One shook his head and slowly replied, "For a pure nirvana cultivator to need this long to comprehend something, it must be an extraordinarily powerful divine ability." Dustless One remained silent for a while, and then shook his head. "I don't think so. Have you noticed? There's not a trace of primordial energy fluctuation around here, not even divine sense. But why can't we enter? There's something mysterious we don't understand, and I always feel that this person seems to be comprehending the Tao." Comprehending the Tao. Stellar One's eyes brightened as he looked carefully for a long time before nodding. "It's very possible. Although there are no fluctuations of primordial power in this place, once you step within a 10-mile radius, you'll be forced back within 3 steps by an overwhelming force," Stellar One said in a deep voice. "Speaking of this overwhelming force that prevents entry, I've noticed something. It feels as though this power is naturally generated between heaven and earth. A few days ago, I tried to walk into it, and I experienced a sensation as if I was facing the roaring sea," First Dragon Prince said with a furrowed brow. "Let's just observe and see what happens. If he is indeed comprehending the Tao, it will be a rare experience for the three of us. After watching, it may also be beneficial for us," Dustless One said calmly, sitting cross-legged in midair, his gaze fixed on Wang Lin, who was seated on the mountain peak ahead. Far in the distance, Floating Wind Master's gaze flickered for a moment as he stared at the mountain peak ahead, muttering to himself, "He doesn't seem to be comprehending the Tao. But no matter what he is doing, for me, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The question is, once I break this seal, what kind of changes will occur?" Floating Wind Master was deeply torn within. Datu, Pagoda Mountain, and Reggie had also arrived here. After all, Wang Lin had been sitting here for nearly a month, and the three of them couldn't help but feel some concern. With each passing sunrise and sunset, time continued to slip away, and yet another month had passed. Wang Lin's eyes were now completely bloodshot. At this moment, he had forgotten everything, his gaze fixed intently on the ocean ahead. In the repeated cycles of sunrise and sunset, he could clearly sense that thread of energy becoming clearer and clearer. This day marked the 9th day, 2 months later. The sky was thick with dark clouds, and thunder rumbled ominously. Soon, large raindrops began to fall as the dawn broke, hitting the earth. On the distant ocean, the rain created ripples as the waves roared, seemingly trying to challenge the heavens. Amidst the rain, the morning sun appeared to be veiled in a layer of mist. It was hard to see clearly, but as soon as the glow appeared between heaven and earth, it was quickly devoured by the dark clouds, vanishing from sight. Through the rain, the morning sun struggled to slowly emerge from the horizon. In that moment, Wang Lin's eyes suddenly narrowed. He had an intense, almost overwhelming feeling that after waiting for more than 2 months, the critical moment had finally arrived. At this instant, all of his mind and spirit were focused entirely on the morning sun. His whole being seemed as if it was merging with it. Thunder roared, and the rain poured, but nothing could stop Wang Lin's gaze. Nothing could interrupt his complete immersion, nor could it prevent the morning sun from rising. As the morning sun struggled to rise from the horizon, with only a small part remaining at the ocean's surface, Wang Lin's mind exploded with a loud crash. He could clearly feel that the threads of energy surrounding his body were rapidly condensing at an unprecedented speed, wrapping around him and finally merging into his body. In that instant, Wang Lin's body trembled violently, as if his soul had left his body. He saw the morning sun rise from the ocean, struggling, as though the sea were a mother and the morning sun an infant. At the moment of dawn, the mother gave birth to the morning sun. At the instant of the morning sun's birth, an unimaginable force erupted. This force was the radiant sunlight, tearing through the night between heaven and earth. The night was shattered and torn apart, and this power was so strong that it could reverse the very laws of the universe, shake the heavenly path, and cause the night to collapse, replacing it with blinding light. The sea's sun dispels the remnants of night. This is the power. Wang Lin's eyes erupted with brilliance. His body and mind completely merged into an enigmatic state, and everything before him seemed frozen in time, the moment when the sunlight tore through the darkness. Now, Floating Wind Master's eyes gleamed coldly. After waiting for more than 2 months, he still had no idea what kind of aftermath he would face after breaking the seal, but he had come up with a solution. Kill Wang Lin. Kill him, and the seal will be broken. Floating Wind Master's eyes flashed with killing intent. His body suddenly shifted, heading straight for Wang Lin as he felt the moment when Wang Lin sensed the power. However, just as he entered the 10-mile radius, Floating Wind Master's face changed drastically. It was as if he had witnessed the most unbelievable sight of his life. Fear and shock filled his eyes. What is this? At that moment, when the scorching sun rose from the ocean, Floating Wind Master felt as though his body was being torn apart. A searing pain spread through every part of his body, even enveloping his essence spirit. The pain was unlike anything he had ever experienced in his life, as if his body was being constantly ripped into pieces. A strong life and death crisis suddenly overwhelmed Floating Wind Master's mind. His eyes widened in horror as he stretched out his arms and shouted loudly. In an instant, a massive surge of primordial energy erupted from his body, forming a storm that shot up toward the sky, attempting to resist the remnant night force that nearly shattered his soul. However, the moment his energy surged outward, it was instantly pierced through by the endless sunlight radiating from the blazing sun, as if it were the breaking dawn. The storm shattered with a deafening roar, torn to pieces and forced to retreat, completely dissipating in mere moments, leaving not a trace. This is impossible. Floating Wind Master's face turned pale, drained of color. At that moment, an indescribable pain surged throughout his body, causing blood to pour from his 7 orifices. He vomited a mouthful of blood and attempted to retreat, only to fearfully realize that no matter how far he tried to move, it seemed like he hadn't moved at all before the blazing sun. Fight for it. Floating Wind Master formed a seal with his right hand and pointed forward. His pure nirvana cultivation erupted in that instant, activating the unique technique that allowed a pure nirvana cultivator to directly absorb the primordial energy of heaven and earth. As his right hand extended, the technique immediately began to operate. A series of energy streams, like angry dragons, roared and coiled toward him, quickly forming a fist-sized energy sphere in front of his right hand. Although this sphere was small, the destructive power within it was something that no glimpse of Nirvana cultivator could resist. The moment the sphere appeared, the entire water spirit star trembled. The land shook, and the 3 masters of Dust Path changed their expressions, retreating without hesitation. The 2 and the others did the same. Before the immense power of a pure Nirvana cultivator, they dared not approach. Floating Wind Master's wild hair was disheveled. Driven by the life and death crisis and the terror of his soul almost shattering, He had reached the point of desperation. He no longer hoped to kill Wang Lin. His only goal now was to survive under the overwhelming divine ability that he still couldn't believe. What kind of divine ability is this? It contains an unimaginable power of the heavenly rules. This technique. This is beyond the reach of any pure nirvana cultivator. Floating Wind Master screamed, his disheveled hair wild, as his right hand pushed the energy sphere forward with all his might. The energy sphere surged forward like lightning, aiming straight for the blazing sun. Only by breaking this sun can I survive. Floating Wind Master thought, his heart racing as he watched the energy sphere rush forward. The sphere moved at incredible speed, charging toward the blazing sun. But just as it neared, an endless force erupted from the sun, colliding with it without restraint. A deafening explosion rang out, echoing across the heavens and earth, shaking even the starry skies outside Water Spirit Star. The ground on Water Spirit Star cracked loudly. The energy sphere shattered. Floating Wind Master let out a miserable laugh, spitting out another mouthful of blood. His body cracked with the sound of tearing, countless wounds spreading across him in an instant, soaking his clothes. The pain was indescribable. Had he not cultivated for many years with incredible perseverance, he would have cried out in agony. At this moment, it felt as if he had turned into the dark night, and as the dawn sun rose, it was tearing him apart, the feeling growing more and more vivid. In the end, he couldn't even tell if it was an illusion or reality. Not only did his body suffer countless wounds, but even his essence spirit was grievously injured, a massive tearing sensation spreading through him as if countless hands were pulling him apart, trying to rip his body into pieces. His essence spirit was experiencing the same torment. In his dazed state, he saw the blazing sun finally rise from the sea, with a faint figure gradually becoming clearer as the sun ascended. Wang Lin. The figure within the sun was none other than Wang Lin. In that instant, Wang Lin was the sun itself, golden light emanating from his body. The light was so intense that no one could clearly see the figure within. The sea beneath the blazing sun revealed the peak of an extraordinary mountain, barely visible in the shimmering waves. All of this was revealed before Floating Wind Master's eyes, filling him with deep fear. What was once thought to be the blazing sun was, in fact, Wang Lin. The sea that rose under the sun no longer existed. It was the peak of Supreme Peak. But the tearing sensation that racked Floating Wind Master's body reminded him that the power of heaven and earth, which could tear apart the night sky, was real. With a desperate roar, Floating Wind Master struggled, enduring the immense pain as he slapped his storage pouch. The moment it opened, his right arm exploded with a loud crash, turning into blood and flesh that scattered into nothingness. A flood of magical treasures burst from his storage pouch, surging out to halt the strange power that was tearing his body apart. But the moment they emerged, they shattered one after another with loud crashes, far too fragile to withstand the force. Floating Wind Master's eyes were bloodshot. On the brink of death, his once restored fleshy mountain body began to shrink madly. In an instant, he was reduced to skin and bones again. As his body contracted, a towering black stone tablet suddenly manifested before him, as if summoned from between heaven and earth. On its surface were countless rune marks, and coiled around it was a massive black serpent. A horn protruded from the serpent's head. It was clearly on the verge of becoming a true dragon. With a low growl from Floating Wind Master, the black serpent opened its mouth, foul wind howling as it lunged toward Wang Lin. Simultaneously, the stone tablet tilted sideways as though it were collapsing, aiming to crush Wang Lin directly. The tablet was enormous. As it tipped, it blotted out the sky, like the heavens themselves were falling. Yet Wang Lin sat cross-legged at the peak of the Supreme Peak. From beginning to end, he hadn't moved a single inch. Calmly, he cast a faint glance at Floating Wind Master, then raised his right hand and waved forward, his voice light as he spoke a single word. Twilight. At the very instant that word escaped his lips, the heavens thundered. Wang Lin's body transformed into a blazing sun, while the mountain beneath him turned into a vast sea. The sun rose fully from the surface of that sea, unleashing a force that tore the night apart. Radiant sunlight erupted wildly, sweeping across the world in every direction like a tidal wave of dawn. The sea births the sun, scattering the remnants of night. Darkness shattered, torn asunder into fragments of what once was twilight. The black serpent let out a wretched cry as its body was ripped apart. The stone tablet cracked with thunderous roars, disintegrating into 1,000 shards, each fragment crumbling to dust. Floating Wind Master spewed a mouthful of blood. Fresh wounds split open all over his body, leaving almost no part unscathed. But rather than continuing to collapse, a powerful force slammed into him, flinging him backward and crashing him into the ground with a loud thud, sending clouds of dust billowing into the air. The night was gone. Everything vanished. The world returned to its original state, as though nothing had ever happened. The three masters of Dust Path stood frozen, scalp tingling, their hearts filled with dread. Even Master might not be able to cast a divine ability like that. This is the divine technique he developed after more than 2 months of Tao comprehension. It's terrifying. If that spell had been aimed at me, there would have been nothing left. Physical and spiritual annihilation. Floating Wind Master is a pure nirvana cultivator, yet even he was forced into retreat. If Senior Wang hadn't shown mercy, there's no way Floating Wind Master could have survived this. The three glanced at each other and saw the same fear mirrored in their eyes. The two inhaled sharply, staring blankly at Wang Lin atop the mountain, whose expression remained unchanged. His heart was a tangle of emotions. The gap between us is growing wider and wider. This alliance journey is a turning point for his cultivation. Reggie's eyes burned with fanaticism as he muttered, "The stronger Master becomes, the more certain I am of reclaiming Demon Star." Only Pagoda Mountain remained impassive, his face indifferent from start to finish. A heavy silence settled over the surroundings. Under the weight of this oppressive atmosphere, no one dared to speak. Wang Lin quietly gazed at the blazing sun in the sky. A glint of clarity shone in his eyes. He stood up and casually stepped forward, instantly appearing before Floating Wind Master. With a swipe of his hand, he grabbed the man's hair and dragged him forward. Before departing, he gave a slight nod to the three masters of Dust Path. Then, in a blur, he vanished. After more than 2 months of waiting, that single instant finally arrived. In that moment, I felt as if I'd entered a realm very similar to the strange dimension of the ancient demon Beluo from the land of demonic spirits, but only similar. Compared to that moment, Beluo's realm is utterly insignificant. Deep in contemplation, Wang Lin appeared outside his palace and walked in. What exactly was that realm just now? Though it lasted only an instant, within it I grasped the power of twilight, the force of dawn tearing apart the world's darkness. This divine technique can be considered the first true spell I've ever created myself. He casually flung Floating Wind Master to the side, then sat cross-legged on the purple jade meditation mat and fell silent. In his mind, the previous scene replayed over and over, that sensation of twilight force being etched firmly into his heart. Inside the palace, Floating Wind Master struggled to sit up, staring at Wang Lin with a complex expression. His body was emaciated, nearly skeletal, like a walking corpse. After a long pause, he rasped, "Was that divine technique you used self-created?" The only reason such a thought crossed his mind was because, despite his countless years of cultivation and his early pure nirvana stage power, he could still sense a rawness within that technique, an unfamiliar edge that could only come from something newly forged. The rawness was not due to the practitioner's unfamiliarity, but because the divine ability itself, when unleashed, felt as if it were a beautiful jade freshly polished from a block of stone. Although it radiated a brilliant glow, it still felt slightly rough to the touch, lacking smoothness and refinement. This was why, after a long hesitation, Floating Wind Master's voice came out hoarsely. Wang Lin calmly glanced at Floating Wind Master and nodded slightly. That nod sent a storm of emotions through Floating Wind Master's heart, causing his mind to ring. He stared blankly at Wang Lin for a long moment, unable to say a word. To create one's own divine ability was not something an ordinary person could achieve. At the very least, based on Floating Wind Master's experience, he had only heard of certain ancient monsters who had reached the shattered nirvana stage, and only they were capable of creating their own divine abilities, crafting techniques that were unique to them. Generally, any self-created divine ability was unimaginably powerful. Self-created, Floating Wind Master's face was filled with bitterness. He never expected that Wang Lin before him had truly created his own divine ability and its power. The thought of that tearing sensation in his body made Floating Wind Master's face turn pale. Even now, the wounds on his body still sent waves of sharp pain, especially his right arm, which had collapsed completely. Floating Wind Master understood that, had the other party wanted to kill him, he would have already perished under that self-created divine ability. As Floating Wind Master's thoughts swirled, Wang Lin was also in deep contemplation. The impact that the Twilight Force had on him was no less than that felt by Floating Wind Master. If anything, it was even greater. My actual cultivation base is only at the peak of mid-glimpse of nirvana, just one step away from late glimpse of nirvana, and even farther from the perfect glimpse of nirvana. Compared to pure nirvana, there's a huge gap. But why? Despite the difference, can I use the Twilight Force so easily to severely injure Floating Wind Master? Wang Lin was silent, constantly pondering this question. While in deep thought, Wang Lin raised his right hand, his eyes shining with an eerie light, recalling the sensation of the Twilight Force in his mind. It began to spread, and immediately, golden light enveloped his right hand, dazzling like the midday sun. Floating Wind Master was greatly alarmed. Despite enduring the excruciating pain, he instinctively took several steps back. However, he did not see the slight furrow of Wang Lin's brows at this moment. Wang Lin's right hand waved, and the golden light dissipated. Floating Wind Master sighed inwardly, his expression showing respect as he said, "Friend Wang, I will never forget your mercy. This incident was my rashness, foolishly hoping for a stroke of luck. With my right arm destroyed, I have seen the truth. You have nothing to worry about. I, Floating Wind Master, swear on my Tao Foundation, there will be no second time." The first time he had been defeated by Wang Lin, though he had compromised, his heart still harbored resistance. He had originally planned to make a move in the land of demonic spirits. But now, having witnessed the Twilight Force and knowing that Wang Lin had created his own divine ability, these words came from the heart. He had abandoned all thoughts of resistance and only wanted to regain his freedom once he left the land of demonic spirits. As for whether this divine ability was truly self-created, Floating Wind Master did not delve too deeply into it. With his experience and cultivation, he could sense a few clues. He believed that about 80% of what Wang Lin said was true. However, whether it was true or not no longer mattered. What mattered was the power of the divine ability, which had completely shocked him. After abandoning all thoughts of resistance, Floating Wind Master felt a sense of relief and no longer cared about anything else. Moreover, after being spared twice, Floating Wind Master understood that mercy had its limits. Wang Lin gave Floating Wind Master a calm glance. Both were people who understood the ways of the world, and some matters did not need warnings or excessive words. He nodded slightly and moved past the issue. "Friend Wang, from my knowledge of the old monsters on Destiny Star, the land of demonic spirits will likely open again soon. It could be as soon as a few months, or as long as half a year. Our time is running out. I need to retreat and recover to my peak state, so I won't disturb you." With the sincere intent to assist Wang Lin, Floating Wind Master began to think about the land of demonic spirits. After bidding farewell to Wang Lin, Floating Wind Master left and immediately began meditating and cultivating in his palace. After Floating Wind Master's departure, Wang Lin furrowed his brow and looked at his right hand. After a moment of silence, he once again unleashed the Twilight Force. Instantly, golden light surrounded his right hand. The moment the golden light appeared, the primordial energy within Wang Lin's body surged toward his right hand, almost uncontrollably. Wang Lin's eyes flickered. He waved his right hand, causing the golden light to dissipate. The primordial energy slowly returned to his body, but just that short time had already consumed more than 10% of his energy. Just like before, the moment I unleashed this technique, my primordial energy rushed out immediately. With the amount of primordial energy I have in my body, it's simply not enough to fully unleash this Twilight Force. But why, on top of that mountain, Was I able to unleash such a terrifying twilight force without consuming any energy? Wang Lin's brows tightened. Could it be? Wang Lin suddenly looked up, his eyes flashing with understanding, as if a revelation had dawned on him. As day turned to night, Wang Lin remained seated in the palace, lost in contemplation until the deep hours yielded to dawn. Just before the break of day, a glint passed through his eyes and he stood, taking a step forward. In an instant, he vanished, reappearing at the summit of Supreme Peak, where he had spent over 2 months in insight. The sea breeze blew against him, carrying a chill of the night, but it drew not a fraction of his attention. His gaze fixed on the distant horizon where the initial sun began to rise. Taking a deep breath, Wang Lin raised his right hand, unleashing the twilight force that surged throughout his body, focusing fully into his hand. In that moment, a golden aura flickered around his right hand, undiminished by any expenditure of primordial energy. As his hand rose and his mind focused, he quickly realized that from the slowly rising sun, an endless power of the world condensed in an instant, merging into his right hand, causing it to shine with brilliant golden light. As more of the world's power poured from the rising sun into Wang Lin's hand, the golden glow intensified, gradually spreading to envelop his entire body. At that moment, Wang Lin radiated an infinite golden light, whereupon he seemed to become the very sun itself, eclipsing the celestial sun, becoming the dawn that radiated across the heavens. Wang Lin's eyes shone with understanding. He relaxed his mind, and the golden light around him slowly dissipated until it faded completely. So it is. Such an astonishing self-created divine ability cannot be executed with my current primordial energy alone. It can only be achieved at the moment of dawn, relying on the world's energy. After a prolonged silence, Wang Lin shook his head slightly, stepping forward and vanishing from his original spot. Although there are limitations, if I engage in battle at the moment of dawn, combined with the third eye technique and the divine shooting chariot, I should be able to challenge even those at the early shattered nirvana stage. At the break of dawn was the time when Wang Lin was at his strongest. Returning to the palace, a cold glint flickered in his eyes as he murmured to himself, excluding Floating Wind Master, I wonder who will be the first to encounter my strength at dawn. Wang Lin settled into a meditative position, forming seals with his hands as defensive formations manifested throughout the palace. After a brief moment, he pointed his right hand to his brow, and the heart-binding technique expanded, sending out black lines that transformed into seals around him. With countless seals enveloping the area, the entire palace was sealed tight. After completing this, Wang Lin felt a tinge of unease. He tapped his storage pouch, and instantly a compass appeared in his hand. This compass was a unique artifact of the practitioner of the Annihilation Seal. Blowing a breath of primordial energy at the compass, the needle began to spin rapidly. Suddenly, the compass soared into the air, expanding to 10 zhang in size, circling above Wang Lin. As he rose, the compass descended, landing on the ground, and Wang Lin sat cross-legged in its center. That should be enough. He tapped his storage pouch again, and the silver-clothed refined corpse appeared before him with a flicker of fluorescence. Gazing at the corpse, Wang Lin breathed gently, then abruptly raised his right hand and thrust it fiercely into the corpse's brow. In that instant, the female corpse's eyes shot open, radiating a cold glare fixed upon Wang Lin. Above her brow, a rapidly spinning vortex appeared, halting Wang Lin's finger just an inch away. A fierce light flashed in her eyes as she abruptly retreated. However, as she did, the compass on the ground emitted a wailing sound, and as it spun, countless seals rapidly flickered, instantly connecting with all the formations inside the palace, creating an irremovable bond. No matter which way the corpse tried to escape, it would encounter a seal, and touching any one of them would activate all of them simultaneously. A flicker of fierce light shone in the corpse's eyes, showing an inkling of mobility as she hesitated, transforming into a silver streak darting to attack Wang Lin. Though the female corpse was gravely injured, her cultivation diminished. Her fierce aura remained unchanged and even intensified. With a single charge, she closed in on Wang Lin, her right hand reaching out to clutch him fiercely. Wang Lin remained calm as she lunged toward him, Just as her hand neared, his right eye glimmered with azure light, exploding forth at the moment her right hand made contact with it. With a scream, the female corpse was sent reeling backward. Although she withdrew, her body remained remarkably agile, slipping past the seals and halting several zhang away, her lively gaze still locked on Wang Lin, baring her teeth in a low growl. This female corpse, once stunningly beautiful, now, with this action, evoked not dread, but instead a strange feeling akin to a cat's grace due to her sharp fangs. The iron chains on her pelvis and waist rattled in collision as they echoed throughout the palace.